Over the past few years, we've seen a steady drumbeat in Washington for the regulation of private industry as well as funding within government for cybersecurity. And no doubt, government networks and private networks could be secured better. But the question is, do we need government intervention to achieve that, at least in the private sector? And what we hear in this drumbeat is an exaggerated doomsday scenarios being played out, where, for example, if we don't invest in cybersecurity or regulate for cybersecurity, we'll see trains derailing, planes falling out of the sky, nuclear reactors exploding, and chlorine gas clouds coming over cities. Really far-fetched ideas. And the question we're asking is, well, where's the evidence? So if we lead ourselves to make policy based on fear, we'll probably make bad policy. No doubt there are threats out there that we really need to take seriously. But what government needs to do if they want citizens to accept regulation and spending for cybersecurity is let us know exactly what the threats are and what they intend to do about them. Because fear is not a good basis for policy making. We need to know what the problem is, what the severity of the threat and what the probability of the risk is, and what are the alternatives that we can consider for mitigating it. So there are many proposals out there for how we should address cybersecurity concerns, stemming from simply spending more money on R&D or requiring private entities to adhere to certain security standards. But some of the more far-reaching ones are very worrisome. So, for example, you have proposals that would create authentication on the internet. So it would be re-engineering the internet and eliminating all anonymity on the internet so that we can pinpoint where attacks are coming from. Now, that sounds great, but number one, it would be incredibly costly because, like I said, it would be a complete re-engineering of the internet. Something that's probably unlikely to happen, but the fact that people are thinking this way is worrisome, because getting rid of anonymity means getting rid of a very valuable part of speech. The founding fathers were the authors of the Federalist Papers anonymously in many cases. That should give you a sense of how important anonymity can be online. So in our history, we've seen other instances of threat inflation. Most recently, we can think about the run-up to the Iraq War, where we were warned about weapons of mass destruction, WMD. And in that sort of definition were nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. And they were all sort of conflated together. We knew that Saddam Hussein had chemical and biological weapons, or had them at some point. And so by putting them in the same bag with nuclear weapons, it sort of really raises the fear. But of course, chem and bio, while horrible weapons, don't nearly come close to the destructive power of nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are really the only real WMD, weapons of mass destruction. Chem and bio, again, terrible, but they're probably more akin to conventional weapons. Well, in the cyber sphere, we have President Obama calling cyber attacks and the sort of means to employ them weapons of mass disruption. And the problem we see in the rhetoric surrounding cybersecurity is that we simply talk about cyber attacks, cyber Katrina, cyber 9/11, and we don't really distinguish between what are the different threats. You could have cyber espionage, where you might have a private or state-sponsored entity break into another company. Let's say we saw allegedly Chinese hackers break into Gmail, Google's mail system, and steal information from the mail accounts of human rights activists. So that's cyber espionage. Then you can have kinetic attacks, where something like Stuxnet, which has been reported, where it's a virus that will literally destroy the physical plant of infrastructure. So in this case, this was Iranian centrifuges that are alleged to be making nuclear materials. Those are very different sort of attacks. And when we see the rhetoric around cybersecurity, we hear folks bring up the worst case scenarios, the kinetic attacks, the trains being derailed, planes falling out of the sky. But when you say, what's the evidence, they point to the lesser attacks. For example, denial of service attacks, which become very prevalent. They're not really sophisticated. Denial of service attacks means flooding a server online with so many requests for information that it comes down. And we see this happen frequently. And it's a big problem, but it's not going to kill anybody. What I'd like to see with cybersecurity is for the rhetoric surrounding it to be toned down a bit, and for us to have a real honest discussion. And this may require the government to disclose what now they see as a secret. And many folks really in this sphere agree that the government's probably overclassifying some of the information surrounding cybersecurity. So really, let us know what the threats are that we are facing, and that will help us have a real discussion with a real analysis of what's going on. So once we have the information that we can analyze, what we need to do is distinguish the threats. Again, pull out the denial of service attacks from the Stuxnets of the world, and be able to tell what are the relative risks and what are the relative probabilities that we will be faced with these threats. Once we've done that, we need to decide, is there really a market failure here? Is this something that the private sector can do on its own, or do we need government intervention? If you think about cyber espionage, this is something that's affecting private companies. They are losing intellectual property. They are losing their reputations when they are being hacked. So who has a better incentive than the private entities of protecting themselves? It's not clear to me why the government would be better suited to come in and tell them how to better protect themselves. And when we do find that there is a problem, you can think about, for example, denial of service attacks as being something that could potentially be a market failure in some case, if you can liken it to pollution. Well, what is the solution? There are different solutions that we can try there. We need to investigate each of these. But we're not doing any of that right now. Right now, we're just roaring through straight to comprehensive cybersecurity legislation. I think we need to just take a step back and really think this through.